Good morning. I'm Linda Ojala. I'm filling in for Tim Jennings today, who is traveling in Australia and talking to many groups of people while he's there about this message of God's character of love. I want to read to you this text, which has come to mean a lot to me, and it's in Luke. It's actually by Zechariah, who was John the Baptist's father, when he could speak again. One of the things he says, this is about Jesus' part of why he even came to earth, to rescue us from the hand of our enemies. And this is pertinent to what I'm trying to say here. Jesus came to enable us to serve him without fear, in righteousness and holiness and righteousness before him all our days. So there's kind of maybe two ways of looking at fear. A fear that this person is powerful and awesome. It's great, but only if you trust that powerful being. Do you look at the 7 days of creation? 6 days were powerful. If you can take a minute amount of material and create an atom bomb out of it with the energy in there, imagine the power it takes to create this and us and everything. So for 6 days, God just flung that power out. So he could have said on that seventh day, okay, see what I've done? Worship me, bow down. I am more powerful than you, recognize it. But instead, he created today. He created the seventh-day Sabbath, a day to think about it. As Tim says, I rest my case. I've shown you what I do. Look at my laws of nature. Look at science. Look at the way I'm treating you. I've created all this for you. Now, take a day and think about it. Think about my creative power, how I use that, how we can relate to each other. That's the potency of the Sabbath. And I've compared it to a wedding ring, being it's not the actual wedding, but it's a symbol of the marriage, say that Ken and I have. It's a symbol of marriage. It's not the marriage. Well, Sabbath is a symbol of our relationship with Christ. And what Ken was talking about earlier in the three angels' messages, when we're talking about worshiping the Creator, and we think specifically Seventh-day Sabbath, and Ellen White talks a lot about that too, we demonstrate. It's like you're going to war under a banner, a certain banner, good guys, bad guys, whatever. I'm under this banner. This God, the one that created everything and then allowed me the freedom to think about it and to choose him freely, that's a God I can get behind. He's my creator. He's a restorer. He gave his life to create the remedy. Just asked me to take it. And I can't be condemned for being born here. It wasn't my fault. But surely, if we don't take the remedy, that falls on us. He gave it to us freely to make the changes that we need to have inside to meet him. Let's say you're a God and you created something, but your very presence is toxic to every one of your creation. No man can see God and live. Therefore, God is toxic to us in our current state. We cannot be in his presence and live. So how would you approach people that you created that are now, because of their choices, under that situation where they can't even be around you anymore, or you would kill them just being around them? So he has created this gem, this brilliant symbol of his leadership with us is a day. And why? And that is so brilliant because everyone has access to the same day. If it was an icon, or if it was even the Ark of the Covenant, or if it was something, I'm convinced that's why there isn't any artifacts left from the sanctuary, because we would worship them. Look at the Shroud of Turin. That's not even proved to be what we think it might be, the shroud over Jesus. But look at the way we treat that. It's like, it's great that we don't have that as a symbol. We have a day, we have a period of time, which everyone has equal access to. No one can keep you from that. The day passes. Every 7 days, we come around again to rest and relax and enjoy our communication with our Savior, with our Creator. But I want to point out that, according to Zechariah, the type of fear of being afraid, that's what Jesus came to eradicate, to enable us to serve him without fear in holiness and righteousness all of our days.
That was the point I was going to make before. My outlook on God now versus what I believed before I come to this class is he's such a loving God, and to be able to judge his character is an honor, because I see him so different than I seen him before. I see him as a loving God, not a God of vengeance or somebody to be afraid of, but a God who would die for me. I was worth dying for. If I was the only person on earth, I was worth dying for. And before I come to this class, it was the do's and don'ts of Sabbath. Not the love that God gave for me in the creation that's out there that he gave to me. It's not a bunch of do's and don'ts to me anymore. I don't even pay attention to that anymore. And that's a blessing in my life, because now I know what the Sabbath was really for. It wasn't for me not to do this, not to do this, not to do that, not to do that. It was for me to enjoy his company.
I tend to be a workaholic. Any other workaholics in here? I love the Sabbath too, because the Sabbath allows me a day free of guilt of not doing all the things that, I think without the Sabbath I'd be doing stuff 24/7.
You keep talking about the Sabbath, and in the lesson it was pretty clear that they're kind of taking it as an arbitrary test of obedience. And yet the Sabbath can be viewed and followed in two completely different ways. So you can either look at it as evidence, this is who God is, and I want to spend time with him and worship the designer and the creator. Or you can say this is an arbitrary test of obedience, and I will fulfill that test and worship on the Sabbath. But you have to understand that you're literally choosing a different God if you're going on the arbitrary test. If you look back at what the Pharisees did, they observed the Sabbath perfectly. So perfectly that they had many, many rules about how to do it. And yet, that clearly did not help them understand God.
They were so far removed from who God really was, they were so anxious to keep the Sabbath that they made sure he was killed and off the cross so that they could go home and worship him. So keeping the Sabbath won't save you